Hello, it's Carrie Rhoades. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing another video for Concord and Ninth featuring one of their brand new products, the Joyful Tiles Bundle. This bundle has a stamp set, a coordinating die set, and a set of Turnabout stencils. There's 2 stencils in the pack. This one that has these fun tile shapes, and this one that has some tiny little octagon shapes. You can use these stencils together and you can use them separate. And I'm going to show you all 3 of those ways today. So 3 cards and tons of fun. So let's get stamping. When I say tons of fun, I am talking about these stencils right here. I love doing Turnabout stencils. It's so easy and so satisfying to use my little blending tool to make my stencil background multiple colors. Speaking of colors, I'm using Altenew inks. I'm using the color family called Red Cosmos. So I can use 4 different red shades and know they're all gonna work together. So I'm starting with Ruby Red, and then I will bring in some Coral Berry. And I'm using a little makeup style blending brush here, and it works great, kind of like a dauber would, but it's just, it gives you more of a fine dusting of ink, and then you can saturate it as much as you want. All right, so now I'm going to take the stencil off and clean it with a damp cloth, and then I'm going to turn it 1/4 turn to the right, and I'm leaving my tape on it, which is my guide, so that I can remember to take the tape off the right side and move it to the left side. And my paper is 6 by 6 inches, so it's just a little bit bigger than the stencil. So the tape is actually holding the stencil to the paper and the whole thing to my glass work mat. So I'm cleaning my brush off on my rag here and picking up my second color. So I turned it and now I'm doing a second color. And I'm just, same technique, rubbing each of the little tile openings with my blending brush, and it does a fabulous job. It's just so easy. It's not tiresome. I don't have to press hard, so I'm loving it. All right, so we'll clean that off, and now we're going to switch to some green colors. And these greens are a different color family from Altenew called Green Fields. So I'm turning my stencil to the right 1/4 turn, moving the tape from the right side back to the left as I corner this in the bottom right corner every time. So I'm using Evergreen ink and Forest Glades, and the same exact technique as before. So what I'm going for here is a Christmas card. The stamp set has the word joy in it, so I thought Christmas in July, I gotta do it. So this background is red and green shades for Christmas. So we'll clean it off again, cleaning off our brush on the dry part of my cloth, and then cleaning off the stencil with a damp side of that cloth. Turn the stencil 1/4 turn to the right, remove the tape from the right side and stick it down on the left. And each time I am getting that stencil down and cornered in that bottom right corner. And there we have it with all the red and all the green. Now I'm going to bring in the second stencil, which are actually little tiny octagons. And I'm going to do the same exact thing here using the 2 other colors from the Green Fields ink collection, which happens to be jet black, like I'm using here. And then the second color for these octagons from that set is called Frayed Leaf. So see here, I'm turning it and moving my tape over just as before, and every time getting that stencil cornered down into that bottom right corner. So one thing you'll notice about these little octagons is that they fit nice and neat in between those tiles, but they don't fill in every single space. So now let's come back in with that red collection, and we're going to do Grapevine and Frosty Pink. The Grapevine is really, really dark. It's the darkest color on there, like a wine red. It's awesome. I love having the 4 different shades of red on there. And then the Frosty Pink is a little bit of a dusty pink, so a really fun combination. So we'll just finish that up. This will be the last inking of the stencil for a complete background. Once that was completely dry after being saturated with all those inks, I'm rubbing it with my anti-static powder tool, and I'm taking this outline stamp from the Joyful Tile stamp set. I'm going to stamp it over the lightest red of the tile shapes with clear pigment ink. And then I'm going to go back and emboss each of those with gold just to give a little bit more interest to this background. So here we come with the gold powder. I just have a folded in half piece of paper to collect the excess powder. Since I am putting powder on such a large piece of paper, I normally would use a coffee filter. That's my favorite thing to do, but like I said, this one is so big. So the fold in half piece of paper works great, and I can pour the excess powder back in. And then I just heat up my heat gun and melt that gold powder, and then I've just got a random selection of that gold embossing. I'm going to trim this panel down to be 3 7/8 by 5 1/8 so that it can fit on the front of my card with a layer behind it, and then the card base will still show. So just trimming those off, and I'm noticing the little edge pieces I could totally save and do something with. I'll figure that out here shortly. So now I'm going to stamp some of the sentiments from the Joyful Tiles stamp set. The first one is Joy, and I'm stamping that onto a green piece of paper and using clear pigment ink so that I can emboss it with clear powder. And I just like how that gives me a darker shade of the color. This color is Lemongrass by Fun Stamper's Journey. And then I can cut that out with the coordinating die. It gives me a little bit of a green edge. I love that all the way around. So you get that two-toned effect. And then I'm going to cut the same die out of very thin chipboard. It's like it comes with packaging. That one I think had some embellishments on it, and I just save it. I'm going to die cut 2 of those and glue them behind my nicely embossed one to give it some sturdiness, to give it some dimension, and then we'll have a really nice element to go on the front of this card. And just to make sure that it adheres well, I'll put it under a heavy block. I'm going to do the same exact thing with the word O. I'm stamping this one onto Cranberry Bliss cardstock and die cutting that with its coordinating die, as well as mounting it onto 2 die cut pieces of chipboard. Again, we'll set that under a heavy block so that it really adheres down nicely, and then we'll come back to that in just a minute. So I'm going to add a coordinating sentiment from the stamp set that says, "Let's Celebrate." I'm stamping that onto some cardstock that is Rustic Rose by Fun Stamper's Journey with some of that grapevine ink. Now this is the layer I'm going to put behind my card front. It is gold mirror paper, and I cut it to 4 inches by 5 1/4, but I didn't want to cover up the whole center, so I used a rectangle die to cut out the center, and then I've got a frame I can adhere my background onto, and I can use that gold mirror paper for something else later, which you'll see me do, because I lost something in the card making process, and I didn't realize where it went till I watched this video back. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So I laid my sentiment strip down where I wanted, and then I used a pencil to trace where it was going to go because I didn't want the end of the strip to show past the word O. So I erased my pencil line, and then we'll come in with some glue. You can see there I had one side I stamped and didn't like it, so I had to stamp it again. I love that paper's two-sided. I think they did it just for me. Yeah, for those mistake moments. So these elements that are backed with the lightweight chipboard will glue down very nicely onto a card and stick very well. So we'll go ahead and glue both of those down with some liquid glue, and right there I dropped the word joy, and the little dot that goes on the J stuck to the back of it, and I didn't know it till I watched this video back, and I searched and searched for that little dot, and I was baffled as to where it possibly could have gotten to. So then I decided, after I stuck this down, that I would make a dot for my joy using that gold mirror paper and the little heart die that's in the Joyful Tiles die set, and I'll just pop that up with a little foam square. So it just is pulling out some of that gold from the background and adds another fun element to this card. And that is card number 1. I'm telling you, that background was so fun to make. I love it. So now let's do a card using just the octagon stencil. So for this card, I thought I recorded the making of the background, but I didn't. So you can see the background there and the colors that I used. You can pause it there. It was coral, berry, and it was also lemon, fresh lemon for the yellow. And then the green that I used was, let me think, it was frayed leaf. And then I also used some limestone green, all from Altenew. So you can see I stamped the N, E-N, and joy with clear pigment ink, and then went over the top with that same lemon color so that I can emboss this with clear powder and have a beautiful yellow image. So I've embossed those, and now we'll go ahead and die cut them out, and that will give me those 2 pieces that I can put side by side to make the word enjoy. And we'll save that dot to use later. I'm going to cut this piece down so that it is just a hair short of 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. So I can mount it on a little bit of a background. So this piece I'm bringing in here is the Sweet Berry paper, and it is 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. So the top layer would be 4 5/8 by 4 5/8. And then I'm going to stamp a coordinating sentiment from this same stamp set and emboss that with white powder, and it says "It's Your Day." So we'll emboss that and get it nice and melted, and then we can start putting the elements of the card together. So I'm gluing down my background onto that Sweet Berry paper, and then my sentiment will get glued on next. And any that hangs off, I'll just snip off so that it's flush with the edge of that pink border. And then I did go ahead and mount up my Enjoy with the chipboard pieces like I did on the first card, just to give them some dimension. And once those are set and ready to go, I decided I would glue these on my card at an angle. It's a long word, and I felt like it fit best on my card going diagonally. And because it didn't fit very good going across the 4 3/4 of an inch, that's what gave me the idea to do it diagonal. So I love it when you have those moments when things don't work out how you thought, and you have to switch it up, and it gives you something unexpected that you actually end up loving. So here I am placing some die cut pieces from this die set. You can see there it cuts the outline of the tile shape and the inside of the tile shape. So I die cut the inside pieces with tin Pail cardstock and the outside with that Sweet Berry cardstock. And I'm going to put 3 of those on the card. Originally I thought I would put more of them, but in the end 3 was just fine. So we'll glue those down, and that will be like the accent for this card. And you want to be really careful getting the glue on these tiny little pieces. I really just try to get a dot on the tip of the glue and kind of spread that dot around on those really thin pieces. But they fit around these tile pieces great. You don't have to worry about turning it to make sure, is that the right side? Is that the right side? You don't have to do that at all. They fit great. So this is the last one, and then we're going to go ahead and mount this card front onto a card base that is 5 inches by 5 inches, and the cardstock I'm using is Whipped Cream by Fun Stamper's Journey. Oh, I did die cut a piece of lemon cardstock with that same heart die to put at the end so it looked like it spanned the entire length of the card. Now I'm going to take those scraps and I'm going to put glue on 3 sides of this piece, and it's a 1-inch strip that is 4 3/4 of an inch long. And once that's dry, I have a little pocket now. I can actually insert a gift card. So when it says "Enjoy, it's your day," they actually have something on the inside to enjoy. Yeah. And then I had 1 more strip left over, so I thought these would be great pieces to accent the flaps of your envelopes. And then you have a matching envelope. And that completes card number 2. And so for card number 3, we're going to use just the tile stencil. So for that, I'm actually going to begin that card with a blended ink background. So we'll get to that with a large blending brush so I can cover a big area, because these stencils do work best if you're using a 6x6 piece of paper, in my opinion. And so I'm starting with that frosty pink ink. I'm actually having to put quite a bit of this on because it's such a light color, and I just wanted it to show up for you on the screen, so I put a lot so you can see it, but it's really, really a light color. And then the second color is the Coral Berry. I used it on all 3 of the cards. I love this color, love it. So we'll blend that on, and then the last color is that ruby red, so we've got kind of an ombre effect going on this card. And using that large blending brush, I like to put my fingers down and hold the actual rounded tip part, and that I feel gives me a little bit more pressure, and I feel like I need that with the bigger brush. And then I'm just going to go back and forth between the colors until I get the blend that I want, and that will complete the background. And the next step would be to bring back in that stencil. So I'm going to use just the tile stencil on this one, and I'm going to turn it the same way as I did before. I'm going to corner it the same way I did before, but I'm going to apply the ink a little bit different. So I'm going to brush the lightest color across the bottom third of the stencil. I'm going to take the medium color and brush it across the middle of the stencil, and the darkest color I'm going to brush across the top. I'm going to clean it off, and I'm going to turn it the same way I did before so that I move the tape from the right to the left, and it's cornered in the bottom right corner. And then again, the darkest color will be brushed across the top, the medium color brushed across the middle, and the lightest color brushed across the bottom. And I'll just continue to do that on all 4 turns of this stencil, and I'll get that nice ombre effect. And I will be honest with you, when I first removed the stencil, I was not sure that I actually loved the end result of this. But I decided I would go ahead and create my card and just see what happened. And in the end, I really loved it. I thought it would be more noticeable of an ombre effect on this, and it wasn't really, but I actually loved the card in the end. So I trimmed that piece down so it was 4 inches by 5 1/4, and I'm die cutting the word joy from the front of it. So here we're going to use the dies and the stamps for the word joy separate from each other. I'm going to mount this eventually onto a top folding note card that's 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2. I'm going to tape this card shut just so I can work with it a little bit easier. And I'm going to tape down this card front where it will eventually go so that I can use it as a guide to stamp the word joy. So once I put my card front on, it will line up with the stamped word on the inside. So here you can see I'm lining it up using my Misty. So I feel a little bit more secure using that, stamping the word joy with Coral Berry ink, and I'm going to repeat that a couple times till I get it the right color, the right saturation of ink that I like. And then that will have a window that you can see through and see the word joy. So if you have a window in your card, you might as well turn it into a shaker card, right? So here I'm going to coat the back of this panel with some double stick tape so that I can adhere a window sheet to the back of it. So there were some teeny tiny little corners that I felt weren't going to hold double stick tape very well, so I just dotted it with a little bit of liquid glue so that would stick down to this window sheet, which I cut a fraction smaller than the actual background panel. And then I will add some foam strips because for a shaker card, you do need it to be raised up, and you need a little box, or what I like to call a reservoir, for your shaker elements. So that means my foam square is going to touch in all the corners so that none of my glitter can escape there. I'm also rubbing those edges with an anti-static powder tool so that the glitter does not stick to that. I stamped my sentiment, "May you always find," with clear pigment ink, embossed it with white powder onto some black licorice cardstock. And I'm going to go ahead and mount that before I finish up my shaker and trim away any excess on the edges so that it's flush with the edge of the paper. Now I'm going to lay this down where it's going to go once my card is finished, and I'm going to use a pencil to kind of trace those corners. So if my joy is covered up a little bit, I can still have a guide where to put this card front. So I'm using diamond dust. This is clear. It's really clear, which I thought would help me once I'm trying to line everything up. I could still see the letters of the word joy versus using a darker glitter that's not as transparent. So that was another little trick that I did. I just laid the glitter on the word joy so it would be free and clear of any adhesive foam tape that was coming down upon it. I used my letters and those pencil marks as a guide and stuck it right down. Now I'm using this eraser that is like a clicky pen, and you can click out as much eraser as you want, and I was able to go in and erase those lines. Now I'm using those extra pieces from the last card that I ended up not using, and I'm gluing them down around 3 of the little tile shapes. And you can see I used my little X-Acto knife or craft knife there to cut away some so that the edge of it was flush with the black. And now I'm trimming this away as well, and then it's got some cute little accents on it. And that completes the third card. I love the Joyful Tile Bundle. So much fun. I hope you like it too. Everything that I've used today is listed and linked for you below. If you're new here, I'd love for you to subscribe. I have new videos every week. Thank you so much for stopping by, and happy stamping. Bye.